Good evening.
Well, how are you?
Okay, how are you?
Well, Hashem.
Okay, I pulled up a screen here. Okay, so we're doing hit. So it says like this. As we already spoke in the tour, Shehu me'ubad l'shem tefillin, right? It has to be produced for the sake of tefillin. The parchment. How are you, David? How about that? Pshita shesarich ibud, but it says for sure you need processing. De'anan ala klaf bainan. Shehu nichtavin. That we need regarding the klaf, the parchment, that it should be written b'chol she'enon me'ubad or mikre. Says if it's not processed properly, it's just called leather, not parchment. So only when you process it to be parchment, it's called parchment. Otherwise, it's just a piece of leather, a piece of hide. Are you there, David?
I'm here.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, thank God. So it says like this, right? That v'lo kalaf v'af agav the perek sheni the Megillah, and even though the second perek of Megillah, Yutet Amud Aleph over there in the Gemara, paslinan pasul diftera, right? Diftera is no good. It's a type of parchment, but it's not kosher. So dehainu or the maliach v'kamiach v'la afitz. So what kind of parchment are we talking about? That it's salted and it's got they put flour on it, like wheat. It's treated with wheat and salt, but it's not afitz, right? What does that mean? It doesn't have, not treated with golden juice. The ibud shelanu en bo afatzim. So it says is our processing doesn't have golden juice. Kvar katvu shama tosot. Also, has already wrote this. Be'arosh be'aran. All these Rishonim have written this already. Shehasid she'anu notenin beklapim. So it says the plaster that we put on a klafim shelanu, on our parchment, it's like lime, mehane kafatzim. So it's the same as golden juice. In other words, has the same effect. So therefore, it's the same thing. It's kosher. Katvu Rabbeinu beilchot Sefer Torah, and Rabbeinu, the Torah, has written this in the laws of Sefer Torah. Umash katav sheibud tzarich sheyeh l'shem tefillin. That which it says that the processing has to be the sake of tefillin. Hainu medeita perek anizakin, like it says in this perek in Gitin Gemara there. Ahu de'ata lekama de Rabbi Abu. There was a certain guy who came to Rabbi Abu. Amale, so it tells him like this: Sefer Torah shekatabti lifloni gvilim shebo. So it says, I wrote Sefer Torah for somebody, and he says the parchment which is in it, lo ivatim lishmam. I didn't process it for the sake of the mitzvah. Right? Good evening. All right. So we didn't do it for the sake of the mitzvah. Or pasla Rabbi Abu. So Rabbi Abu told him it's pasul. It wasn't done for the sake of the mitzvah. So it says in this parak in Sanhedrin, Ifligu Abaye and Rabba, they had an argument, Abaye and Rabba. The Abaye Amar Hazmana Miltahi. So Abaye says Hazmana Miltahi. So what that means is that when you prepare something, even though it hasn't been used yet, it's considered to be like already having that it's kosher. The Rabbi Amar La Miltahi, and Rabbi holds it's not kosher. So he says we have qualified this Tana'eh, that's a machloket between also Tanaim as well. They're Emoraim, and there's also machloket in Tanaim, same thing. The Tanya, it says in Braita, Sifan Zahav, if he overlaid it with gold, right, the parchment, or Shatala Alehem or he hung on them leather, hide, shel behema teme'ah. So what did he do? He hung on it or hide, which comes from a treif animal. Psulot, they're pasul. Or behema tehora ksherot. But if he did it with kosher hides, then it's kosher. Shelo avdan lishman. If he didn't, afapi shelo avdan lishman. Even though he didn't process it for the sake of the mitzvah. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. So says Rashbag, Af or shel behema tehora psulot. Says even the hide of the unclean animals, the pasul, achi avdu lishman. I'm sorry, the clean animals. The clean animals, they're pasul until you process them lishman, for the sake of the mitzvah. Rashi explains, afapi shelo avdu le'orze lishman. It says even though they didn't make this parchment, they didn't make this leather for the sake of the mitzvah, because just preparing is not enough. We don't care about that. So it says kasher, difficult. The Rabbeinu Tam, for Rabbeinu Tam, the kaimalan be'azmana halacha kiraba. So because we hold that when it comes to this issue of hazmana, preparing something, halacha like rabba. Uve'ibud lishma kaimalan kirabi shimon megamliel. But when it comes to processing the leather for the sake of the mitzvah, we call it Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Like it says over there in this parak, regarding the story that somebody came to Rabbi Abu, as we said, we just mentioned it. So he says you can't really make a chiluk, right? Separate, differentiate between the leather of the tefillin and the gvil, the shel Sefer Torah, the parchment of the Sefer Torah. The ha shin shel tefillin. Why? Because the shin of the tefillin, halacha leMoshe miSinai. It's halacha shel Moshe Sinai. Umparesh Rabbeinu Tam the Rabba. So it says that Rabbeinu Tam explains that Rabba the Amar Hazmana Lav Miltai. Rabba says that Hazmana preparation is not significant. Sabra Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Goes like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. The by ibud lishma that you do require the processing for the sake of the mitzvah. Mishum the law sagi be'azmana. It's not enough just to prepare it. Katav calls man be'orech hamordechi calls zev morech be'orech be'luchot katanot. He says he wrote this the Mordechai there at length. Ve'af al pi ve'al pi. I'm sorry. According to this, it's written in Agur. And also Zarua. So he says that tefillin lechatchila requires processing for the sake of the mitzvah. Of the avad, im lo avdan nishman. But b'diavad, if he didn't do it for the sake of the mitzvah, the perush Rashi, according to Rashi, ksherim, they're kosher. According to the Rach, Rabbeinu Tam, pasulot, they're pasul. So that's how the custom is, he says. Okay, that's the language of that was the language of the Ozarua. Okay, interesting. So then he goes on, so he says all the poskim hold that if he didn't process it for the sake of the mitzvah, Pesulin the Pasul, Ukadat Rabbeinu Tam, just like the Rach and Rabbeinu Tam. But Dash Katav Rosh, so he says you should know that the Rosh wrote B'Ilchot Sefer Torah and laws of Sefer Torah. Rabbeinu Baruch, so he says Rabbeinu Baruch Nistapek im Tzarich Leotzi Bisfatav Shehu Me'abdo L'Shem Sefer Torah. He had a doubt if you have to say with your mouth that he's doing it for the sake of the Sefer Torah. Do you actually have to say that, or just thinking it is enough with tefillin? Or is it enough just to think it? So he says, therefore, it's a good idea to say it also, because we're not really sure what the halacha is. Is it enough just to think about it, or do you actually have to say it? When you start processing, you should say that you're doing it for the sake of the mitzvah. So he says, then you don't need anything else. That's what it says in the Samag. V'siman kapei, v'chen katvu agaot b'shmo b'perek aleph. Also agaot. V'lo katvu kan Rabbeinu lefi shesamach al ma shkatav b'yadchot Sefer Torah. And Rabbeinu didn't write this. The Torah didn't write this. Why? Because he relied on that which he wrote regarding the laws of Sefer Torah. So he says, if he made it for the sake of mezuzah, it's no good. Why is that? Because tefillin and mezuzah is not the same thing. So if he made it for a mezuzah, it's not kosher for tefillin. That's what he's saying. Right? I don't need to tell you, according to one who says, tefillin, parsha echad, that tefillin is one parsha. Mezuzah ena nitzricha ibud dechi. So it says the mezuzah does not require processing. Dechi ibed lishma lav klumhu. So it says if he does it for the sake of the mitzvah, it's not really relevant because you don't need it. You don't need it. Not necessary. It says even according to one who says mezuzah tzricha ibud, the one that says that mezuzah does require ibud, it does require to be processed. Lo mehane mishum kedushat tefillin chamura, right? It doesn't help you because the tefillin is more holy than the mezuzah, according to what we're saying, since it requires for the sake of the mitzvah. Kedushat mezuzah kedita perek comments, like it says in perek comments lamed bet amud aleph. Aval imi bed l'shem sefer Torah. It says if he did it, if he processed it for the sake of the sefer Torah. Then you can write tefillin. Why? Because Sefer Torah is more holy than tefillin. So therefore, right, the higher holiness covers the lower one, but the lower one doesn't cover the higher one. That's what we're saying. So he says if you have a bite, in other words, the tefillin, the capsule, which has tefillin in there. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. Again, one more time. A house which has tefillin, mutar leshamesh bo alidei shenicham kli b'toch kli. So let's say, right, a person wants to have relations with his wife. Is he allowed to have a tefillin in that room? So he says, if you put it into a double bag, then it's okay, right? One bag inside of another bag. Sefer Torah asur, but Sefer Torah is asur until you take it out. He doesn't have another room. He has to make a partition 10 tefachim high, which is about up to your waist, right? So you see again, right, same thing, that you see from here that the holiness of the Sefer Torah is higher than the tefillin, and the tefillin is higher than the mezuzah. So what does that mean, practically speaking? That if you had the intention to make it into a Sefer Torah, you could also make it into a tefillin. But if you had intention to make it into a mezuzah, you can't make it into tefillin because tefillin is a higher level. higher level of holiness. Okay, very good. That's that. So, okay, good. We'll see the Shulchan Aruch on this. So says Shulchan Aruch, tzarich shaklav liot meubad. That, as we said, right, that the parchment has to be processed, b'afatzim or besid, either with gomna juice or with lime, right? So whatever, plaster or whatever, God knows. So it says, okay, the tzarich sheyeh meubad lishmo also has to be done for the sake of the mitzvah. So two things, right? We need the processing, the proper processing, and also the proper intention. So says Maran Shulchan Aruch, tov leotzi b'sfatav b'tchilat ha'ibud. It's a good idea when you start doing the processing of the leather, you should say with your mouth, shehu me'abdo l'shem tefillin. You're making it for the sake of tefillin. Or l'shem sefer Torah, or for the sake of the sefer Torah. Aval im besid, I'm sorry, im yivda l'shem mezuzah. If you made it for the sake of the mezuzah, pasul, it's pasul for what? Pasul for tefillin, because tefillin is on a higher level. So as you see, right, that tefillin requires exacting type of processing and making, right? And that's why you should never buy tefillin from somebody who doesn't know what he's doing, right? Because he may sell you something. He may sell you a lemon. You know, if you know what I mean. So that's be kosher, you know. So don't just trust anybody when it comes to these things. Like it says in the Shulchan Aruch, you know, it says that when you buy tefillin, you should buy it from somebody who's expert in the laws of tefillin. You know, or somebody who bought it from him, whatever. You know, in other words, you know, in other words, it needs to have some kind of hechsher, you know, like in other words, some kind of a affirmation that it's done properly by somebody who's expert. By the way, same thing also for mezuzot. You know, when you're buying mezuzot, don't just buy it from anybody. You know, you should make sure you're buying it from somebody who's doing things properly, right, and knows what a mezuzah is, and so forth and so on. As opposed to what? As opposed to tzitzit, right? We said when it comes to tzitzit, you can even buy it from a goy. You know, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. When it comes to these two things, they require more expertise. You know, mezuzah and tefillin, all the more so sefer Torah, right? So therefore, you should only buy it from somebody who's reliable, somebody who's expert in that stuff. They say, by the way, that it says in Shulchan Aruch that we're going to see that probably later on, that if you bought it from somebody who's not expert, you have to have it checked to make sure that's kosher. It must be checked. So it's either or, right? Either you buy it from an expert or you have to check it. So one or the other. Okay, very good. We're done with that. Let's go to the next piece. There's also a piece here I think we missed in Bit Yosef, Zayin Bet. I'll read it now. Let's see how big this is. Not too big. Okay. I'll just read through this. A second. It says like this. Now what she said, you have to write on the side of the meat, right, as we said, right? The side of the flesh of the animal. If you wrote on the side of the hair, pasul, we said it's not kosher. Because I already wrote in the Braita, this perek, uperek hakometz and perek hakometz. Tanya kalaf makom basar duchsustus makom se'ar. So it says like this, right? That the Braita says, klaf is the one which is on the side of the meat, right? That's what it says in the Gemara. Duchsustus makom se'ar. It's on the side of the hair. Umashma atam. So it says, it implies there, Deim Shina Pasul, that if you changed it, it's Pasul. Okay. B'Yushalmi Kama Megillah, then Yerushalmi in first paragraph of Megillah, Tanya, halacha leMoshe Sinai. Again, right? We see that there's a halacha Moshe Sinai. Sheyu kotvim beorot. First of all, they should be writing with parchment, right? The Tefillin, not some paper. You bought whatever else. You can't use paper. You need parchment, right? Obviously. Kotev al agvil. Also, you got to write on the gvil, right, which is parchment. The makom se'ar, which is on the side of the hair. Okay. Ve'ala klaf, and also on the klaf, makom right? Makom nechshato, klomar b'tzad ha'tachton. What does that mean? The lower part, the one that's facing the meat. Shelo. Dehainu b'makom basar, where the meat is. Ve'im shina pasul. If he changes pasul, udlo kemosh katav Tosfot, not like what it says in Tosfot. Yakometz lechad shinuya. According to one answer. De'im shina katav klaf makom se'ar. That if he changed it, right, didn't do like the instructions, and he wrote the side of the hair on the klaf, or duxustus the side of the meat, kasher, it's kosher. Right? Shekola poskim holchim alem. So all poskim are not agreeing with Tosfot. So therefore halacha is not like them. They scheme on if so. So therefore, right, they all said the poskim is pasul in the case like that. Okay, very good. So we'll go on now to Tet. Okay, so it says in Tet, let me just see if there's any tour here. I think there is. I think we read it. Yeah, okay, so let me just read this. So it says, if it was done by a goy, right, we read this already. Katav Rambam, right? Says the Rambam, Perek Aleph, Shu Pasul, it's Pasul. Afilu Amar Lo Israel Le'abed Lishmo. Even if he told to the Jew to do it for the sake of the mitzvah. Mishum the goy adata de nafshi abid. So why is that, by the way? Why is it that the goy can't make it like that? So the reason is because he does it for himself. In other words, he doesn't have this concept of doing it for the mitzvah. He doesn't understand what that is. He doesn't have that concept, in his head. Rosh katab b'ilchot Sefer Torah. So the Rosh says in the laws of Sefer Torah, B'Shem Rabbeinu Baruch, the name is Baruch, she'im hagoy me'abado b'Yisrael omed al gabav. That if the goy does it, right, and the Jew is standing on top of him, on top of it, he's right next to him, he's watching him, and he helps him. Messiah ze yesh bo mamash. So he says this is like something real. Because now, because he helps him, right, the goy is doing it for the Jew. So he says, writes furthermore, says the minhag is like it says in Rabbeinu Baruch, Ki en avdanin Israel b'kol mekomot. So he says, you know why? Because there aren't any Jews who can do this job in every place. We don't have enough Jews to do this job, to make the parchment. Says that's the logical choice. That's the way the Itur also holds. So he's trying to say, right, that where the Ashkenazim they lived, they simply didn't have enough Jews, to do this job. So therefore, they had to go according to lenient opinion, which is the Rosh. So what does the Rosh say? The Rosh says that if you have a goy doing it and a Jew is standing on top of him, to watch him and to guide him, that's good enough. Okay. So that's what it says in the Itur also. V'sagi b'goy she'abdenu lishmo. Says it's enough that a goy should do it for the sake of the mitzvah. Rabbeinu lo iskir she'Yisrael yisayah. Rabbeinu the Torah didn't mention that the Jew should be helping him. Mashma d'Yisrael, so it implies that he holds the Messiah, the Nakat Rabbeinu Baruch, the helping that the Rabbeinu Baruch said. Dafka, it's not really Dafka helping, not exactly helping. The Dafka Kamar, even if you can tell me that you said it precisely that he has to help. So since the Balaitur was machshir, the making of, with a goy, lishmo, for the sake of the mitzvah. V'lo izkir she'isaya Yisrael, didn't really mention that a Jew has to help him. Pasak kimoto, therefore he passed him like that. It's more reasonable to say the samach al mash katav b'ilchot sefer Torah. He relied on that which he wrote in the laws of sefer Torah. Divrei Rabbeinu Baruch, this rabbi, Beizkir Yisrael Messiah, and he mentioned that the Jew helps. V'gam katav l'shem Rab Nitonai. He also wrote the name of this Gaon, Mishabadam l'shem sefer Torah. But when he does it for the sake of the sefer Torah, Yisaya imo me'at. You should help him a little bit, the Jew. Even though there he also wrote the words of the Balaitur, it seems like we help posting like these rabbis. He didn't bring the words of the Balaitur, just to exclude the Rambam, the Pasal Ibud Goy, because he altogether disqualifies, right, the making with a Goy. So it's possible that even the Itur himself, that what he holds, you can help him. Even though it doesn't say that. That's what it says in Samag, Siman Cafe. So he says you have to, as we said, right, you got to make the parchment for the sake of the mitzvah, or or help the goy when he's doing it, right? For the sake of mitzvah. That's what it says in Magot Maimon. So you see, right, that there's also opinion like this. So we'll see the Shulchan Aruch, how he paskins. I think it's a difference between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim, this whole thing. As we're going to see now. Right, so it says like this, right? So it says if a goy processed it, the parchment, the Rambam pasul. According to Rambam, it's pasul. That's what it says in Shulchan Aruch. Afilu amar lo Yisrael le'abed lishmo. Even though the Jew told him to do it for the sake of the mitzvah. Harosh, so it's going to Rosh kasher, it's kosher. Im Yisrael omed al gavo v'sio. If the goy is standing there and helping him, right? I'm sorry, the Jew is standing there helping him. Aga katzat mi'avodah, a little bit with the labor. But Yosef b'shem Harosh. So says Rama, this was a custom. Right? Look above, he says. So the truth is, that it could be very well that in Europe, even maybe in Spain, they had a problem, because they didn't have enough Jewish workers to do the job. So therefore, they were bringing goyim and doing it like the Rosh, according to the opinion of the Rosh. But today, I don't. In Israel, you have enough workers, so there's usually no problem there. You can find workers to do this. The truth is, it's not easy to find Jewish labor. Jews don't like to do mechanical work. They don't like to do physical labor. This is the problem. So sometimes you can't find them. So for sure, right? If you can't find Jews to do the processing, what you do is you do like the Rosh. You bring the goy, and you stand on top of him. And guide him. And this is the way it's done, right? If there's no choice. That's pretty much the story.
Georgian Jews especially don't like to do physical labor.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah,
What, an Ashkenazi they do? I don't know.
I don't know.
Not sure
Maybe because we grew up on 108th Street where they all hung out over there. And
yeah, doing nothing, right? Idlers.
Yeah, doing nothing.
Okay. Right, we got it.
Remember when the Mercedes would pass by, all the heads would turn at once?
Okay, so that's that. Okay, so all right, that's the story here. By the way, this machloket that we see here also applies to other things as well. That have to be made with intention for the mitzvah. That sometimes we allow the goy to do it when the Jew is standing on top of him, especially when we have no choice. That's what we do. But according to Rambam, it's pasul, right? So you don't want to do this lechatchila, obviously. Only if there's no choice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's go on. So we're going to Yud. Yes, we're going to Yud. Okay, so it says there, Katuv be'Hagot Maimon. It's written Hagot Maimon. Perek Aleph min Chot min Tefillin. וכשמסמנים הנקבים במרצע, כאין אותיות, אף על פי שהרבה נקל לגוי, לזייף שייתן את הנקובים על שאינם נקובים, וינקוב במרצע דרך הנקבים, כמו שעשה ישראל מכל מקום, אין חוששים לזיוף למילתת גוי פן יכיר ישראל בתביעות עין, שנתן בסימנים, וכן פירש לי עד כאן. So I'll read this one more time. I didn't translate it. So it says like this, right? כתוב בהגות מימון. It says הגות מימון, פרק א', first פרק הלכות תפילין, לא זה תפילין. כשמסמנין הנקבים במרצע. So he says when they how do you say this? When they mark, you're right. When they mark the holes, he says, with that pin that they use, some kind of a pin, large pin, ken otiot, like letters. So he says, even though it's much easier for a goy to forge this, to cheat and to put the holes on the ones that have no holes, and then he should again put holes there with this needle. The way of the holes, like he did the Jew. So he says, nevertheless, we're not really concerned about fraud, right? Forgery. The miltat goy. Why? Because the goy is afraid. Pen yakira said. Maybe the Jew will will see, right? Will notice what's going on. But because he can see it with his eyes, he can recognize it. Shenatan b'simanin, that he put on the simanin, these signs. That's how the Rebbe explains. Okay, so I'm not really sure exactly what he's saying here. What I'm going to do is look at the Shulchan Aruch, and he'll probably explain better exactly what this means. Not so clear what he's trying to say here. Right. So let's look at the Shulchan Aruch. He says it, I think, more clearly. So he says, when they're marking the holes with that needle, right, the pin, can otiot. So in other words, what he's saying is like this, right? That they're like etching letters by making holes, like shapes of letters without using ink, like that. Says even though the goy now can easily forge this, so what does that mean? He can also do the letters because now it's marked. But he says, nevertheless, we're not concerned about that. Because the goy is afraid, maybe the Jew will tell. So in other words, it's okay to do this, and we're not afraid that some goy will come and forge it. So what is he trying to say? That we're not afraid that the goy will come and do the writing, even though he's not supposed to be writing the tefillin. Why? Because he's afraid to do it, since the Jew will recognize what he's doing. So let me just see the
sorry to interrupt. In penmanship for little kids, so we have paper that is dotted, like it's pressed down, where they trace those dots. So I'm thinking it's almost like similar, where they press down.
That's exactly the whole thing, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm just looking at the Mishnah board to see what he says about this. Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's the story. Pretty much the story. What I told you. There's also Magen Abraham. I'm just gonna see what he writes over here. If he adds anything to it. Okay, so the Magen Abraham explains it a little bit better, right? What he's saying is like this, right? That what's the real concern over here? That the goy will place another parchment on top of it, and then do those holes by himself to follow the holes on the parchment which is below.
Like copy carbon, like putting
Right, exactly. Yeah.
at the same time, yeah.
Exactly. So it says we're not concerned about that. That's the whole thing. Okay, let me just see. There's one more Magen Avraham here. Okay. Okay, let's go on. Let's go to the next one, which is Yud Aleph. So this is a short one. It says, or shene'abad shelo lishmo. So it says, if the leather was not, as we said, the parchment was not processed for the mitzvah, im yesh tikun lachazor le'avdo lishmo. Is there a way to fix this problem? In other words, or is it just you have to throw it away? That's the question, right? So he says there is a way, maybe there is a way, right? What's the possible thing? That to process it again. In other words, it was already processed, and now he does another processing. He reprocesses it. Does that help you? Katav Rabbeinu b'Hilchot Sefer Torah. So it says Rabbeinu wrote this regarding the laws of Sefer Torah, the Torah. So let's see what the Shulchan Aruch says about this. It says Shulchan Aruch, same thing. או שיבדו שלא לשמו, אם יש תיקון לחזור ולהודו לשמו, יתברר בטור יורדיה סימן ריש עין א'. So explained over there in Yordea, this whole thing, this halacha. 1 second. There's a Taz over here. Right, so the Taz says, and over there it says in the Yordea that you can do it like that, right? You can reprocess it, and it'll be kosher. So what does that mean? You do the whole process, from the beginning, like it wasn't processed at all. And it's just like you did something new, even though it's already been done before. So therefore, it's kosher according to what it says there. That's what it says in the Taz. Okay, very good. Let's go to Yud Bet. Okay, good. Now we have to read the Torah here. It's something new. So it says in the Torah, so what do you have to make this parchment from, right? What kind of animal does it need to be made from? So it says it has to be first of all, kosher animals, right? Has to be kosher animals. What does that mean? Kosher species, right? So it could be mammals, could be birds, could be wild animals, as long as they're kosher species. Even though the animal itself is not kosher, why? Because it wasn't just slaughtered properly. But nevertheless, since it's a kosher species, it's kosher for tefillin. But you cannot use non-kosher species. You can't use fish, even though the fish is a kosher species. If I remember correctly, the reason why they tell you not to use fish is because it smells bad. So that's why we don't want to use it for tefillin. Okay, we'll get to that. Bezat Hashem. Let's see the big Yosef on that. It says in Bet Yosef, Pashut b'perek Shemona Shel Atzim. Pashut over there, in Shabbat Kuf Chet. So let's go on. So it says, why can't you use it from fish? So it says, Sham Baya de Lo Shita. It was a question which wasn't answered. Pasak de Chumra. So it goes stringently. That's how Rambam Paskins as well. That you cannot use fish. Okay, let's go to Shulchan Aruch. You bet. So it says, right? As we said, it has to be made from animals, right? Birds, mammals, whatever, which are kosher species. Even though they're not slaughtered kosher. But it says not from the animals and wild animals or the birds, which are impure species. It says that the words of Hashem should be in your mouth. What does that mean? Something which can go into your mouth, it's kosher. And not and not from the fish. Why is it, as we said, right? What's the reason for the fish? Because it smells bad. That's the reason why. So therefore we don't use the fish leather. Okay. Very good. So we're finished with this. Let's go to Gimel. So it should be complete. Right, let's go back to the tour on this. We didn't do a tour. So it says the tour like this. Should be complete. What does that mean? No holes. No holes in the parchment. Because the ink can't go over it. It says if after it was already written, then it got some holes there. Inside the letter, right? Kasher, it's kosher. So it says Yesh Omrim. Some say Afilu nikab kol tocho. Even if the whole thing, the whole inside, got a hole. Biyushalmi mashma d'tzarich gam b'fnim mukaf gvil. In Yerushalmi, it implies that also inside you need that it should be surrounded with parchment. Therefore, if the whole thing in the middle was the inside was made a hole there, pasul. If it was there was a hole in the inner leg, shel hay, like the hay. Even though only a little bit is left over, kasher, it's kosher. But if it was the right leg was got a hole, if it's still left over, like a little letter, the amount of a little letter, kasher, it's kosher. Pasul. Some say pasul. And if one of the letters got cut off, whatever, it's cracked. If a child, which is not too wise and not too dumb, like average child, he knows how to read it. Kasher. In other words, he can. It's legible for him. He can read it. It's kosher. If he can't read it, pasul. It's pasul. Okay. Very good. כתוב בסמ"ק, it says in the סמ"ק, שאם נפלה, okay, we'll stop there, we'll do the bit Yosef. Let's go to bit Yosef. So it says in the bit Yosef, Yud Gimel, ויהיה שלם שלא יהיה בו נקב שאין דיו עובר עליו. It should be complete. So what does that mean? There should be no holes in the parchment, which the ink can't go over it. שם בפרק האור והעוטף, it's over there in חולין. ק"ט עמוד ב', כל נקב שהדיו עובר עליו, so it says every hole that the ink goes over it, no נקב, it's not called a hole. In other words, it's too small, no big deal. משמע האם אין הדיו עובר עליו, but if the ink doesn't go over it, in other words, it doesn't cover it, right? That's what I mean. It doesn't cover it. Have a nikev, let's call the hole. So that's good. That's the problem. Katabari Askandari. So this rabbi wrote Askandarni. The Siman Lamed Vav. This chapter 36. Perush nikev katan kechuda shel machat. So you have a small hole, like the edge of the pin, the needle, ad kishemavir alav akulmus, and when he passes over the ink, the pen, with the ink, his thumb, it gets closed up, it gets sealed up. Shena ot nichleket bo l'shnayim. So it says it doesn't get divided into two letters. And only cracked nikil. It's not called a hole. Kotvin al gabav aval, and we write on top of it. Aval imu gadol. If it's a big hole, sha'ot niret bo, that the letter is visible there. Chalukah shnaim, and it looks like it's divided into two letters. Badai nekev, that's for sure a hole. That's it's puzzle, right? No good. Okay, let's see Shulchan Aruch Yud Gimel. Shulchan Aruch Yud Gimel, yeh klav shalem shelo yeh bo nekavim. It has to be complete. 1 second. Yeah, I'm sorry. So it says right that the parchment has to be complete. What does that mean? No holes. Shelo yeh bo nekavim. Shena de'o over alahem. What does that mean? It's a big hole where the ink doesn't cover it up. Does that mean is that the letter will not be seen there? Chalukah, divided. It won't look like it's divided. It's time into two. Right, so in other words, as long as it doesn't look like that, it's divided into two, it's okay. So again, right, I'll read that again one more time. Right? The parchment has to be complete. There should be no holes there. Which where the ink doesn't go over them. What does that mean? That means that you can't recognize the letter, right? Because it's divided up into two. So it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like this divided into two. If it is, it's not kosher. Okay. Very good. Let's go to your Dalet. Okay. So it says in Bet Yosef, Katav Od Ari Aksandani. He also wrote this, Rabbi, Asofrim Azrizim Osim Shlosha Mine Klapim. So he says the good sofrim, the good scribes, what they do is they make three types of klaf parchment. They make a thick one, Parashat Shema, to write the Shema, which is a small chapter, a small portion, small paragraph. She'i ktana, it's the hadak mimenu, and then he takes a thinner one, a thinner parchment, the Parashat Vehaya, for Vehaya, which is a little bit bigger. Ki yevayacha sheyayad shehi yoter gdola. So this one, which is a little bit bigger, this portion, Parashat Kodesh, Parashat Vehaya. So he says, and Parashat Kodesh, Parashat Vehaya, which is Vehaya ki im Shamua, which are larger paragraphs. Shen Arukot Osin Klaf Dak Meod. So then we make a very thin cloth, very thin parchment. So how does that help you? Because now all the compartments in the Tefillin will be filled up equally. In other words, in the same rate, the same proportion. So this makes the tefillin more pleasing to look at, right? Nice looking. So it's nicer looking. Why? Because it's symmetrical. Everything is done the same way in every compartment, filled up equally. So this is like a special thing, to do with the tefillin to make it look better, to make it look more even, more symmetrical, right? So forth and so on. Okay, very good. So we'll go on to Tetvav. So it says, if after got a hole, then I'm sorry, if after it was written, nikab betocha ot, then it got a hole inside the letter, it's kosher. The perka comments, it's over there in the Gemara, Kaftet Amud Aleph, Amar Ashyan bar Nidbach, nikab tocho shel hay. So he says that if the inside of the hay got a hole, kasher, kosher, yerecho pasul. But if it was the leg of the letter, pasul. Rashi explains, tocho, the inside, regular panim, that means the inside of the leg, the inner part. Yerecho, what does the yerecho mean? Regular yamani, it's the right foot, the right leg. Lashon acher, different way to say it is tocho hagavila ve'achalak shvetocho. So we're talking about the parchment which is inside the letter, the blanks. Rambam Katav says the Rambam Perek Aleph Minchot Tefillin over there, and first lots of Tefillin. Lashon Acharon, like the last language, last opinion that we mentioned. לכן כתוב בספר התרומה, that's what it says also in ספר התרומה, סימן רש ה' שלשון אחרון עיקר, that the second opinion is the halacha. The לשון תוכו משמע, because why? Because when it says inside, it implies inside the middle of the letter, like the inside. The donut, right? The inside of the donut, right? Inside the hole. דהיינו, halalo, right? So we're talking about the blank part, right? The empty part inside, the hollow part. The leidach lishna beperish Rashi, because according to the other language that Rashi explained, tocho regel the Somali. It's talking about tocho. It means inside, means the left foot. Shehu bifnim, which is inside. Lo nachon hu. This is not correct to say that way. Demali yamin, mali small. Because why would I care if it's a right leg or left leg? How does that change? Anything. But the Rosh said in the laws of Sefer Torah, Shelashon Rishon Ikar, that the first language is the Ikar. So in other words, the Paskin is not like the Rambam, just the opposite, right? The Perush Sheni Kasher, because according to the second Perush, according to the second explanation, difficult. Amay Nakat Tochor Hey. Why was he talking about the inside of the Hey? To pay Mishal to it more than any other letters. Yafa Piken Katav Rabenu, nevertheless says Rabenu the Torah, Kirashon Sheni, he passes like the second language. Mishum Deika Lemema Chada Miaotiot. So it's because there is to say that one of those letters, Sheesh Dem Toch, that has an inside, there's a hollow space there. Nakat is using one of them as an example. Rosh Moded and Ikav Halal. So even the Rosh could be possible that he admits that when the inside there, the empty part, got a hole, kasher, it's kosher, but lo katav de lashon rishon ikar. They didn't write the first language as ikar. Litchot dino shel lashon sheni. So he says he didn't write that. The first lashon is ikar. Litchot dino shel lashon sheni. The first language is the main halacha. To push away the second language. Ela lomar de al milta de ashian bar nidvach. Rather, he wants to say that regarding the story of this rabbi, this guy, whatever. Itashev tfei lashon rishon. It's better fits into the first opinion, lashon sheni, than the second opinion. Yesh omrim da afilu nikav kol tacho. Some say even if it all was the whole got a hole, the whole thing. Well, Yerushalmi mashma, Yerushalmi implies shetzarich gam bifnim mukaf kavil. It also requires that inside it should be also surrounded with parchment. The Sefer Turma, like it says in the Turma, Samag or Mordechai Perek Kometz, Mordechai Pagot Maimon. Also this Perek Aleph, first Perek Katvu de Mashma. They wrote over there that implies to have the Amar Ashian Nikav Tochod Shel Hey. That which this guy said. That the inside of the hay, kasher, it's kosher. Even if the hole fills up the whole air space, the whole blank space there. Aval Yerushalmi, but in the Yerushalmi says, "Per kama de Megillah." First Perek of Megillah, poselet im gevil makif heot mebifnim. He says it's pasul if the gevil, if the parchment surrounds the letter inside. Okay, so that's the story. Now there's more. That was so. Therefore, he says that which Rabbeinu said, that if the whole inside got a hole, it's pasul. Efshar shehu sium dat Yerushalmi, could be the conclusion of the Yerushalmi. Tomar b'Yerushalmi mashma, because in the Yerushalmi it implies shetzarich gam bifnim mukaf gvil. The inside also has to be surrounded by parchment. According to this, if the whole inside got a hole, pasul. So it's possible that it's his own language. To posek lifsol, the paskins that he wants to puzzle it. Kevan the Yerushalmi posel, because in the Yerushalmi puzzles it. The Talmud adidan, but it's in our Talmud. It's not really so clear what the halacha is there. Aval Rambam. Katav stam nikab betoch haot. But says the Rambam that if the letter got a hole, okay, go on toch hey, like the inside of the hay, or toch mem, or inside the mem. וכן בשאר האותיות, and also other letters, כאשר it's kosher, ולא חילק בין ניקה ממלוא או כל חלל, ואחד דהיינו ניקה ממלוא הלל. He didn't differentiate between if it was all with a hole or just or not. The Gam Mordechai Perek Chametz, it says Mordechai also in this Perek, Achar Shevi Yerushalmi, after he brought Yerushalmi, Katav Umiu Talmud, it says, however, our Talmud La Baye Hekef Gavil doesn't require that it should be surrounded with parchment, bifnim inside. V'chol Rabotenu Shavin B'davar. So all the rabbis agree with this. Ad kan neshano. V'chen Katav Sefer Tumah. That's what it says in Sefer Tumah. Shetalmud shelanu machshir legameh. Our Talmud is machshir is it. V'yesh ledakdek b'lashon Rabbeinu. So he says that we should be precise with the language of Rabbeinu. The Torah. Lama katav yesh yomrim. Why did he say that some say afilu nikab kol tocho? Even if all of it was as a whole, kasher it's whole kosher. Shahar kol poskim shuvshvu v'lomar. All the poskim agree to say Talmud adidan machshir afilu nikab kol tocho. Our Talmud machshir it even if the whole thing as a whole. Okay. Good. V'tzarich lomar the mishum delishna kama the Rashi. So you have to say that because of the first language of Rashi, the law ayre Talmuda behachi klal, Talmud's not dealing with this at all. Enanu elak dibi Yerushalmi. So therefore, all we have is the words of Yerushalmi. The law machshir ela im ken mukaf kabil. He only machshir it. He only says it's kosher if it's surrounded with parchment. L'lishna bata de mayre behachi. So it says according to the last language, which is dealing with this, mashma de afilu nikav kol tocho. Implies that if even the whole inside had a hole, kasher it's kosher. Tamar says it's kosher. Yesh omrim afilu nikav kol tocho. Some say even if it's the whole inside got a hole, jainu atofsim lashon shenikar. According to the ones who hold that the second language is the main one. Umash katav rabbeinu nikav beregel aprimi. Let me just see how far this goes. Okay, I guess we'll stop there. We'll continue next time. The rest of this. It's long. One second. Yes, I guess we'll stop there.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Okay, very good. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Chazak Baruch. Thanks for coming.
Thank
Be
you.
blessed with wealth, health, and happiness. Torah,
Amen.
holiness, and joy.
Amen. Thank you,
Tomorrow.
Kabbalah.
Later tov.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Later tov.